Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. My apologies that I'm a few minutes late. I had a few technical glitches opening up GoToWebinar, so my sincere apologies, but I'm here now. Okay, so I'm going to crack straight on, having been a little bit late starting, so forgive me for sort of rushing straight in and overlooking some of the sort of more niceties of welcoming you and finding out how everybody is. So this afternoon's webinar is on simple strategies for inspiring and engaging your team to deliver outstanding customer experiences. So that you can get involved this afternoon, I'm just going to take you through some of the controls. If those of you who are not familiar with GoToWebinar, you'll should see on the right-hand side a little control panel, and on the control panel there will be a little a white arrow with a red background. If your control panel is not showing, just click on that and then that will enable it to pop out. I'm just going to do a little sound check. Could you oh, this seems to happen every time. Apologies for this. Sorry, that's popped up and I don't think I forgot rid of it. It might come back again in a moment, so forgive me. I've had that a few times recently when I've gone into GoToWebinar, so if anybody knows how to get rid of that, I'd be very grateful. Just to check that everybody can hear me okay, if you look for the little symbol with a hand on, if you could just click on that just so that I can check, first of all, that you can hear me okay. Well, that's brilliant, that looks like most of you. And then I'll just put everybody's hands down and just to check that you can all see okay and see my screen. So you should be seeing how to participate today up on the screen. Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. As I said, that little message that just popped up on the screen, I've had that a few times recently when I've gone into GoToWebinar, and because it always it throws me every time, I never seem to find the right thing to click to get rid of it. So I apologise if it pops back up again. So what is today all about, and why are we doing this session? Well, before we do that, I just thought it would be really useful. I think there are a few people on the line who I don't know particularly well, so I'm just going to introduce myself first of all. I'm Caroline Cooper, and a little bit about my background. My background is I hate to say it, 28 to 29 years in hospitality and tourism industry. Originally in operations and then more recently in a training role. I was head of training for one of the big contract catering companies, had responsibility for 55,000 employees in terms of training. I set up on my own 9 years ago, and originally I set up actually as a leadership coach, and I was doing that for quite a number of years, and then 4 years ago, I had this like, oh, hang on a minute, I've got all this year's experience in hospitality, why aren't I using that? So I went back to hospitality, and as such, I sort of carved a little bit of a niche there. Some of you will know Lucy Whittington, and wrote a book with Lucy called The Hotel Success Handbook. So that's now been available for 3.5 years. Write regularly for a number of journals. I speak at events. But then last year I realised that I was doing some work for a lot of tourism businesses, and I realised that the bit that I really loved was talking about the customer experience, and particularly doing customer experience training. And really topping and tailing that is that on the front end of that, also talking about helping businesses to set up, identify what were their customer service values, because to me, if you don't have those in place, then you can do all the training that you like, but if no one's got a clear idea about what the end result is, then it's all a little bit meaningless. And then on the back end of the customer service training is then ensuring that all the systems and all the structure was in place so that the team could then actually fulfill their responsibilities in terms of looking after the customer. So it's some of those things that we're going to be looking at this afternoon. So let's crack on with the content, which is, as we said earlier, 6 simple strategies for inspiring and engaging your team to deliver outstanding customer experiences. So why actually is this important? Well, we all know that that first impression is very, very important, and probably 90% of the time, even with a small business, is that quite often your customers are going to encounter somebody else before they actually get to speak to you or to deal with you, whether that is phoning through, whether it's somebody working virtually, or they could actually be somebody who works for you, full-time, part-time, might be in the same premises as you, maybe working somewhere else. And that might be their first impression. And of course, we all know that first impressions are so powerful. And if that's not a good one, then that could really sort of sour the whole of the relationship. And it doesn't mean to say that you're not going to necessarily work with that customer or that client, but it might mean that it's just a lot harder work, because when you've had a bad experience as a customer early on, it means then that you actually start to get this buyer's remorse, and then you start looking for everything that backs up your initial perception. And one of the things is, in a hotel setting, which is, as you know, is where I spent a lot of my career, is that if you can't find, if you don't get your confirmations through, you can't find the premises, and then you get greeted with a sort of rather sour-looking receptionist. You're then looking for everything that backs up your original perception, is that I'm not going to enjoy this, I'm going to have a bad experience. So you start nitpicking. So it doesn't matter who they encounter, whether that's you or a member of your team, that has to be absolutely sort of second to none. And of course, it doesn't necessarily happen just while they're doing business directly with you, because if they encounter those people when they're phoning, or maybe if you're if you're a physical business and you have got a team who might be shopping in your town, and they're wearing a uniform, and they're easily identifiable with you, then it all comes back to you. So your team can be very, very powerful in terms of influencing your customers and the experience that they have and how you are perceived. So there are sort of 4 headings that I'm going to go through today. I know there's 6 strategies, but one of these headings actually includes 3 strategies. So let's look at what those sort of 4 main headings are, and what I believe contributes to how engaged, how inspired your team are, and then the net result of then how that then rubs off onto your customers. So the first thing that I think contributes massively is them knowing what's expected. Now, when I said about how my business is set up and the 3 things that I cover, one of those is talking about what are your customer service values, and people then understanding what they are, and we're all coming from the same point. So we'll be looking at that. The second area is looking at equipping your team, and there's quite a lot under this heading. So it's the skills and behaviours, the knowledge that they have, the resources that they have, and their confidence to do their job. So we're going to be spending a little bit of time looking at what needs to be in place in order to equip your team. We're then going to be thinking about taking ownership, and this, I think, is one of the biggest frustrations that businesses have, large and small, is that however big or small your business is, you cannot be there 24/7. And stuff happens, and you are often dependent on your team to use their initiative to do what is going to be best for the customer. But it doesn't always happen, does it? And it's very frustrating for you when you find out that one of your team either hasn't taken their initiative, or they've done something that actually goes a little bit beyond what you would have wanted them to do in the first place. And that can be a little bit worrying for you, and also the customers, it might set a precedent with your customer in terms of how things are going to be dealt with. So you want that ownership to be, we want to say ownership, but we want them doing the right things. So we'll be looking at that. And this is where there are 3 particular headings within this that I'm going to be talking about. And then finally, it's some kind of recognition. We all know that if we don't get the credit, then it means that sometimes we're not necessarily willing to, even if we've got all the right resources there, that taking ownership doesn't necessarily quite happen. And also, if we don't feel appreciated, then sometimes that then rubs off on the customer. And I have a very strong belief that if you want your team to treat your customers well, treat your team the way that you want them to treat your customers. And so you actually become a role model for them, that they then actually see what good care looks like, feels like. So they're using you as a role model. So we'll finish the session with five things that you can do to reward your team that are not going to cost the earth, because I think the perception very often is that when we talk about rewarding our team is that we're talking, oh, you know, I can't afford to do that. And there are lots of things that you can do that will not cost you very much at all, if anything, other than maybe a little bit of time and a little bit of thought. So, in the brief today, the first thing the first point this is the one thing you really must have in place if you want your team to be meeting yours and your customers' service expectations. So what is that one thing that we absolutely must have there if we have got any chance at all of achieving this? Well, this to me is deciding what you want. What is it that you're actually looking for? How do we define good service? And you'll see the little tick box down the bottom there of outstanding, very good, good, average, poor. But what for you defines an outstanding service? And I don't know whether that's anything that you've actually really thought about. You've probably got in your mind's eye what that looks like, what it feels like. So let's have a look at some of the questions that we perhaps need to be asking in relation to that. The first thing is, well, what are your values? How important is it for you to be offering a fantastic or an outstanding service? Where does that sort of sit in terms of, you know, most people would pride themselves, I would hope, in terms of the product or the service that they are providing. Is the service that your customers get an integral part of that? And you know, sometimes that does very much depend on the nature of the business, because if you think about, let me take supermarkets as an example, and if you have a, you know, pile 'em high, sell 'em cheap sort of approach, then your values towards service maybe, I'm not saying necessarily that's the case, but maybe fairly low down on the pecking order. But let me give you an example where perhaps that doesn't happen. We all take the mickey out of people like EasyJet, but people know exactly what they're going to get. And actually, the service that you get on an EasyJet, you know, they make light of it, so they've got a particular sort of brand associated with that, and some of the part of it is the humour. And I'm not saying, you know, that I like the service that you get on that, but at least you know pretty much what you're going to get. If you're in the top end of the market, then, you know, I would say that for most businesses that has to be absolutely second to none. So defining those values, first of all, is going to be key. The second thing that you want to be doing is then actually, this is when you then get down to defining the good or outstanding service. So what does that look like for you? And as a result of that then is when we're then communicating that with our team, rather than this is what I want you to do, it's a lot easier then to say, well, this is actually the end result. This is what we're looking for. This is what we want to achieve for our customers. So the focus is on the end result rather than the how we're going to achieve it. And the reason I say that is because then that allows a little bit of leeway, a little bit of involvement from your team, and we're going to be talking about that shortly. The other consideration is, what is the customer's perspective? And here what we're thinking is, what do we want them to come away with? What do we want our customers to be thinking about you? So there are 3 questions that I always ask my clients when we're talking about the customer experience. And that is that when customers leave you or they finish doing business with you, what would you want them to feel? What would you want them to be saying, and what do you want them to do? So when we talk about what you want them to be feeling, dependent on the nature of your business. So let's say that you are a service business, that you would probably want people to be feeling, well, one of the things that any type of business probably is that actually I've had really good value for money. So, you know, even if you're a top-end service and you're charging a lot of money for it, Yes, you can do that, providing people still feel that they've had value. If you're in a business where it is all about the experience that people get, so let's say, for example, hospitality, you might wanting to people to feel that they've been indulged or that they feel really special if they've been there for, a special occasion, for example. So what are the feelings, what are the emotions that you want to elicit in your customers? Second thing is, what would you want them to be saying? And I like people to be thinking about what if you were a fly on the wall or a fly on the car window as they were driving away from your business, or if you work remotely and you've been on a call with them and you've been maybe in a coaching environment and you've had that conversation, what are the types of things that once they put the phone down, what would you really like them to be saying to their partner or their business partner or to other people about you? And then the third element is, what would you want them to be doing? So this is partly the sort of actions that you'd want them to take as a result of the work that you've been doing with them. And I know that we do have some people who work, very much in a sort of service capacities as mentors and coaches. So you'll be wanting people to take action as a result of what they've been doing with you. If you're in, if you sell a product, what might you want them to be doing? What comes to mind here is that if you're in hospitality, for example, or in tourism, which I know some of you are, one of the things that you might be wanting people to do is to refer you to other people, and also maybe writing a glowing review on TripAdvisor or on LinkedIn or something of that nature. So this is a sort of physical action. So there's a number of things that could come under the do. And the reason that I say that this is so important is that if you can define that and then communicate that to your team, what then is happening is that when we get further into this is what I want you to do, they can then see how that then connects to how you want your customers to be leaving you, what you want them to be feeling, what you want them to say, what you want them to do. And it also means that when you're not there to make a decision for them, hopefully you've embedded these things so strongly that they then actually say, okay, well, if the end result is that I want a customer to feel that way, what would I do? What would I be doing in order to do that? So if we go back to that previous slide when we talked about communicating the what rather than the how, this is all about the what. This is what we're looking to achieve. And that then gives both you and your team a focus. So you're moving away from bland and ambiguous statements like, well, we want them to have a good time, we want them to have a great experience. That's not definitive enough. It's not enough for people then to be able to make a decision on how they behave or what they do or what they say. So this for me is absolutely fundamental, and it is such a key part of giving your customers a good experience is to have that defined. And again, looking at the people who I know are on the call today, I know that a lot of you, one of the things that you will obviously work to very often is having some very clear goals, clear objectives. So it's the same. It's the same principle. You're defining very clearly what you want and then communicating that to your team. Now, the other thing I'd say about that, because today is about engaging your team and involving them, is get them involved with that process. That's not for you, and if you've got, co-owners, business partners, whatever, management team to go and sit in a dark room and discuss all of this. Involve your team in the process. I mean, for example, a client that I'm currently working with, we did this a couple of weeks ago, and not only did we have her team there, but we also had a number of her key suppliers as well, who are absolutely integral to her business. She couldn't survive without these suppliers, and a lot of these suppliers actually end up liaising with her customers, and so it was very important that she got them involved with this process as well. So this all makes up your customer service values. This all goes towards having that clear goal, that clear intention. What I failed to say in the introduction is that if you do have any questions or you want to make a point along the way, then please either just put your hands up. I know a lot of you have already seen how to do that, so just put a little click on or where the hand is, or just pop a question in the question box, which is sort of about halfway down the your control panel. So please do feel free to do that. I won't guarantee that I'll answer them straight away, because I find that I end up trying to read the question and talking at the same time, and it doesn't work. I'm not very good at doing two things at once. Okay, so the next thing then that we want to think about is that is thinking about this consistency aspect. So how do we ensure that consistency so that your customers are going to receive the same level of service each and every time that they visit you or that they do any work with you? Because, you know, at the end of the day, you're only as good as that last interaction with that particular customer. And some of you will be aware of the emotional bank account. So yes, you can build up some credit balance, but if you're working with somebody and you've not really had that opportunity to build up a lot of credits, that when something then goes wrong and they have a bad experience of you, that can really just sort of blow the whole thing for you. So you want that reassurance that you've got that consistency. And as I said earlier, if they end up speaking to one of your team rather than you, that you know that they're going to get the same level. And for those of you who are, you know, growing businesses, you'll want to be taking a step out to be focusing on working on your business rather than in it. So you've got to feel confident that your team can cope without you. Otherwise, you'll just stress yourself out so much. So what are the things then that we need to ensure consistency? Well, this is where we start to think about the behaviours and the resources and everything, and equipping your team. So what are the things that we need to factor in here? Well, the first is thinking about the resources, and you'll see the little sort of toolkits down there. So yes, it's giving them the right tools to do their job. But when I talk about resources, it's also thinking about the right people resources, the giving them enough time to do things. Because if you think about when things go wrong in your business, yes, sometimes it's down to the individual skills and capabilities, but it's also very often because a bit of equipment's broken down. I mean, if you think about today, I was let go because I had a bit of a glitch with GoToWebinar, for which I sincerely apologise. And, you know, stuff does go wrong. So it's making sure that, yeah, you're always going to still have those occasional glitches, but if it's happening all of the time, that you're picking up on that and that you're correcting it, because that's frustrating not only for you, but it's frustrating for your team and ultimately, obviously, for your customers. It's also allowing enough time for things. If staff members are stretched, then they will inevitably cut corners. They'll find that the quickest way to do it rather than necessarily the best way to do it. And also means that when they're really stretched, is that if there is something that is, you know, very important but takes a long time, and there's something that is less important but doesn't take very long, human nature says, well, I'll just do the thing that only takes me 5 minutes rather than the thing that takes me an hour, and that I've already got to concentrate on. So, you know, making sure that there's sufficient time to focus on the stuff that is really going to make a difference, and that if anything has to drop, it's the little 5-minute job that doesn't make a massive difference. So resources is about time and people as well. So thinking about the behaviours, what behaviours am I looking for? So if we go back to what we were saying about what do we want our customers to feel and be saying and doing, well, if we step back from that and say, okay, so what are the things that my team need to be doing to elicit, one of the examples I gave is that we want them to go and post a positive review on TripAdvisor, if that's relevant to your business. I know it won't be relevant to everybody that's listening, but maybe a recommendation on LinkedIn might still be. If that's what we want them to do, as our customers to do, what do our team need to be doing to facilitate that process? So, for example, if I can just sort of go back to in a hospitality setting again, because I think that even if those of you on the call don't work in that, you're often on the receiving end of it, is, well, giving somebody something that actually just makes it easy for them to go and find where to go on TripAdvisor. Making sure that that last impression is a really positive one, so that when they leave you, the last thing they remember is that really, really smiley face and that cheerful person, rather than somebody that's, metaphorically getting the Hoover out and just can't wait to get rid of you. We've all encountered that, so like had a really good experience, but then somebody ruins it because you feel that they can't get rid of you quick enough. So it's been quite specific about what behaviours we expect from our team. So when we say to our team, well, we want you to be really welcoming, what does that mean? Does that mean rushing out to the car park the minute they arrive and greeting them, or is that actually a little bit over the top? Does it mean making eye contact with somebody instantly, irrespective of what they're doing or whether they're talking to somebody on the phone or dealing with something else, that the least they do is to make eye contact and smile at somebody when they walk to reception? Or the way in which they answer the phone, so that they're quantifiable behaviours that we're describing. Then it's thinking about the knowledge. So what I would include under knowledge is product knowledge about your business, how things work, and not necessarily being able to quote a huge, massive laundry list of everything, but within that they're able to then match how what you offer matches the customer's specific needs. So actually thinking back to behaviours, one of the behaviours might be that they're listening and they're asking the right question to unravel what your customers are looking for, so that they can then share the relevant knowledge. Thinking about knowledge, one of the things that always amazes me is that if you've got a larger team and they work in different departments, that one department doesn't know what another department does, might not have ever visited them, spent time with them. So if you have, do your salespeople ever go out with your delivery team? Does your receptionist ever go and see what's happening on I term the shop floor? So that could be anything. Do they see what's going on behind the scenes? So if you are a consultant, have they ever actually been out with you? Do they know what you do? Do they really understand the process that you do when you're working one-on-one with a customer or a client? If you're in a hotel, have reception actually seen the difference between a standard room and a suite, for example? So a lot of that is to do with the product knowledge. Also knowledge about what's happening in your industry, what are the types of things that people might be asking about. So if you are, for example, a mortgage advisor, what's the sort of stuff that's coming up in the press at the moment that people might have concerns and questions about? So that then leads into skills, which I know is a sort of combination really of behaviours and knowledge, but this is, for me, is the more practical side of it. And if you remember early on, we were talking about not necessarily telling people exactly how you want something done, but thinking about the end result. So when it comes to, let's go back to the warm welcome, and some of the behaviours might be making eye contact and smiling. One of the skills might be the way in which you greet customers. Now, I think we've all been there, haven't we, and we've heard the scripts. And scripts can work very well, but equally, scripts can just sound really, really awful. So with skills, my recommendation is that you allow people that little bit of leeway, let them know what you're looking for, but let them find their own style of delivery so that they can then do it in such a way that feels comfortable to them, but still meets your criteria and your objective. So for example, if you, rather than giving them a script, is that you let them use their own dialogue, and one that really comes naturally to them, so it doesn't sound like have a nice day now, because we can all spot that a mile off, can't we? Then giving them the right support. So what I mean by this is that we've talked about resources, that's fine, but if you combine the behaviours, the knowledge and the skills, there's a sort of practical element of that, putting all of that into practice. And when you've got a team and you're expecting them to do all of those things, is that they'll do it once, and if they get no feedback, they'll probably assume that they've done it okay. So they'll keep doing it, and they'll keep doing it, and they'll keep doing it. And then sort of 6 months down the track, you're sort of like, oh, God, I wish they'd stop doing it like that. Now, the thing is, if you've not told them that's not exactly how you want it done, then you probably only got yourself to blame. Or support could be coming back to resources, so it's giving them the right guidance and it's coaching them and supporting them along the way so that they can enhance their skills, they can enhance their knowledge, they can enhance their behaviours to achieve the objectives that you're looking for. And then the final one on this list is about building confidence. And this one for me is probably the most important in this section, because if people don't have the confidence, they will just shy away, they will duck. So coming into talking about engaging your team, if they don't have the confidence to get out there and talk to your customers and deliver everything that you want, they won't do it or they'll mess it up. So the best way to give them the confidence is to let them practice, but let them practice in a safe environment, give them feedback, let them know how well they're doing, and if they need some coaching, give them that coaching in order to deliver it effectively. So here we've looked at equipping your team so that you can feel confident that they're going to deliver consistency for you. So let's now look at the 3 key principles to get your team taking responsibility and using their initiative to take that pressure off you. Now, a lot of what we've already talked about is definitely going to help you with that. But I've actually got 3 key headings here, or 3 key strategies. One is that we're communicating, and we've already talked about just you deciding what you want, and we've talked about involving them in that process. Secondly, it's about involving them, and thirdly, it's about empowering them. So let's just look at those 3 headings. So, communicating what we want. So we've talked about what we want our customers to be feeling, to be saying, to be doing as a result of doing business with you. That's the sort of the first part. But of course, things change on a day-to-day basis. Doing that, as a one-off probably isn't going to be enough. So what else do we need to consider? Well, first of all is that I've put up their daily briefings. I would say that in any business, as a minimum, weekly briefings. Now, I say daily because I've come from a hospitality industry and things change very, very quickly. But particularly when you've got lots of people coming to a particular venue or a particular site, and a lot of the businesses that I've worked with in the past have been, very, very busy sites. And I appreciate that for some businesses, things won't change on a daily basis, but they probably change on a weekly basis. So what are the types of things that you might be doing at a daily briefing? Well, for example, if you know you've got particular customers coming in that day and they have got particular preferences, stupid little things like how they take their coffee, that can be important. And for a customer that, they remember that I like my coffee black and with 2 sugars. That's the sort of little attention to detail that can make a massive difference with your customers. And if your team know that as well, then that is definitely going to help that whole relationship, and also just giving your team members will feel good as well that they've got that information, because they're now doing what you want them to do in terms of making your customers feel really good. What's happening in the business that day, any sort of specials or anything that's on that could be applicable to your customers, what's going on in other parts of the business if that is relevant, what's been in the news. I mentioned earlier, for example, if you're a mortgage advisor and there's been something in the news about mortgage rates or buy-to-let or any of those things, all of that could have an impact on people's perceptions, the types of questions that people might be asking, even if not there in person, maybe on the phone or any inquiries. Maybe what's happening locally that could have an impact on your customers. So if you've got a local customer base, what's happening, that you're up to date with those things as well. So either remotely or actually, geographically in your area. And for some of you, that actually might be something that could enhance their visit to you as well, because if it's something that they can combine when they're with you, might be a joint venture thing. So letting your team know what else is happening out and about. And when I say that with the daily briefings, is that if you work in, a lot of my clients work in managed offices. So if you've got a receptionist or security in those managed offices, then make sure that they know who's coming as well and what's happening. Because again, that's the first thing that they're going to see, or maybe even they're phoning up if they're trying to find your offices. That might be their first point of contact. I've mentioned about what's happening. I'd add in here about what's happening that could actually present any problems. So maybe there's been something that has been a glitch in the past that you need to be mindful of. Something has gone wrong, or something potentially could go wrong. So I don't know, IT problems if you're having your website updated, possible disruption by stuff that's going on outside your building, because there's road work, it's going to be a lot of noise, any of those types of things. The other thing I'd say about a daily briefing and what's happening is that it's a great opportunity for your team to be feeding back to you as well. So this is an opportunity for them to be talking about, what feedback that they've had from customers, any particular questions that they've been asked, any concerns that have been raised. So all of that needs to be factored in, and it's a great way to flush those things out while it's still fresh in people's minds. The other thing I was saying about communicating is communicating the what if. So if this happens today, this is what you need to do. So this goes back to that confidence thing, because when we're training people, we often just talk about when everything's going smoothly. This is in theory how it should all happen. But we all know stuff goes wrong. So equipping people to deal with that, not to, preempt it and to, say to a customer, oh, I think this is going to go wrong today. But if things do go wrong, that they feel confident then to rise to the occasion and they can then deal with it. So maybe there has been a problem with something, I don't know, let's say a mailing has gone out and there's been a blip with that, and if they think there's going to be some flack from that, how they would then deal with it, as an example. And feedback we've mentioned, so we've talked about that one as well. The second one is to get their involvement and get their ownership. And there are three things particularly that I think that we should be thinking about here in terms of getting people's involvement. First of all, and it is just so obvious, is ask them for their feedback and their ideas. And because most of us are so wrapped up in our business on a day-to-day basis, is that quite often we can't see the wood for the trees, that we become completely blinkered by things that customers might pick up, or that our team pick up, who are sort of sometimes a little bit more on the periphery. So encourage them to come forward, first of all, with their own ideas about how customer service can be improved. And if they've had a say in that, they will be far more likely then to follow through on it rather than us dictating. And it gives them that sense of pride, because if they come up with an idea about, oh, I think that we could be doing this to speed up delivery, or we could be doing this, that when we answer the phone it'd be really nice to tell customers about this. If they come up with it, that makes them feel really good, and that then has a positive spin-off in terms of how they then deal with the customers. Asking about what observations they have, and one of the things that I really encourage is for everybody, all of your team, to do what I refer to as the customer journey. So that's looking at everything from how your website looks, through to if they were to phone the office or to phone you, how easy it is to get through, what's your voicemail message like, if they're coming to physical premises, what's the first thing they see, how easy is it to park, all of those things. And you'll be amazed what your team will pick up. And unless you ask them, they'll think, oh no, I've known about that for ages, but I just didn't like to say anything. Or I assumed that you knew. So ask the question. They quite often will also have conversations with customers or overhear what customers are saying, which might be really, really useful feedback for you as well. Second thing outside of this heading is to think about having a team effort. And so, from my point of view, service should be seamless, and there is nothing worse from a customer to hear from a team member is that, oh, well, that's not my job, you'll need to speak to her, or that's not my responsibility. And it's to engender that sense of, right, okay, it might not be your responsibility to carry that through, but certainly if a customer has asked me, it's my responsibility to go and tell that other person about it and to follow it through and make sure that the customer gets what they want. So it comes back again to communication, but everybody needs to understand everybody else's role as well, so that if they get asked about something that isn't directly their job, at least they know who to go to, and that they understand enough to be asking the customer the right questions, so that when they then go and brief the right person, they've got all the relevant information. So this is about encouraging staff to take ownership of questions, problems that a customer might have, specific requests, and then brief their colleagues accordingly. And that's another good reason of having team briefings, because then those sort of things can be talked about. The third area in terms of involvement is that we as managers or owners of the business need to recognise that some team members will not be particularly forthcoming in coming forward either with their suggestions or how improvements could be made, or about frustrations that they have which they then end up taking out on the customer, or that has an impact on the customer in some way. So our job is to really be, first of all, be approachable, so that people feel that actually if they've got an idea, even if it's a bit of a wacky off-the-wall idea, that they're not going to get their head bitten off, or it's not going to get completely dismissed, or they're not going to look an idiot by coming forward with that idea, so that everything is sort of taken with the intention of which it's meant, and that everything will be considered. So being approachable. Flushing out concerns before they become a problem. So this is about nipping things in the bud. So when you see that somebody is struggling with something, rather than just thinking, oh, they'll work it out, is try and flush out what the problem is. Because if it's something that's down to you or a system, let's rectify that before the customer actually is on the receiving end of it. It's to consult with staff, listen to their ideas about whether there are better ways of doing something. I mean, you might have a system that's working, pretty well at the moment, and it's got a 95% success rate. But if a member of your team's got something that will actually improve that success rate to 96, 97, 98% success, whoopee. So let's hear it. So it's encouraging them to come forward with those things. Listening to staff concerns, because we've all been there, haven't we, in the corporate world, when staff concerns, they fester. And when they're things that are festering, people don't perform to their best. And again, when things are festering and they've got things on their mind, again, customers can pick it up very easily. So we should be picking those things up before the customer does. And take time talking to staff, building relationships, showing an interest in them as individuals, help to build that trust in exactly the same way that we're all familiar with the know, like and trust in terms of customers. So think about the know, like and trust as well with your team, so that first of all they know that they can trust you, that if they've got an issue or they've got something or they've got an idea, it's not going to be rubbished, and that you also recognise their value, so that when they go that extra mile, you know how to thank them, you know about their interests, aspirations. Generally that you're taking an interest in them, because if you do that, you're far more likely to get their buy-in, and it's a lot easier then that when you're looking for a way to give them some sort of incentive or to reward them, it's a darn sight easier to do that because you know what's important to them. And we all know, everybody's motivated by different things, so picking up on those and having those sort of conversations. Okay, so far we've looked at what you've got to have in place. So this is talking about the service values. We've looked about having that consistency and how you're going to get the consistency by equipping your team. And we've looked at two of the elements that will, two of the principles that will help your team to take responsibility. Now, one of the things that I mentioned here was about doing the customer audit, the customer journey, and looking at that from a customer's perspective. So, sorry, we have done that. I just thought I got the slide in the wrong place for a minute. Apologies. Just want to tell you, forget that. So on to the third area. So the third area is that we need to empower our team. So how do we go about empowering our team? Well, we need to, first of all, encourage our team to anticipate, think ahead what our customers' needs are. So you will have particular sort of processes in your business that you will take, that is your sort of customer life cycle, if you like. So think about what are the different things that happen on that customer life cycle, and encourage your team to be thinking ahead about what's the customer going to be looking for next. And the more that they know about your customers, the easier it's going to be for them to anticipate what's going to be the next step. And the great thing as a customer is, isn't it great when somebody actually, leads you to the next step rather than having to ask for it, which is also good from a sales point of view for you as well. So anticipating questions and being one step ahead of your customers. The second thing is that I always recommend is that when you've got a bigger team is that you actually have champions for different things. So things that in theory would be a manager's job or your job is that where you have seen people with particular strengths, particular skills, is to tap into that, give them a sense of pride, maybe a little bit of responsibility, but recognizing that not everybody wants that responsibility, but they get that sense of pride. And what that then does is that champion then, because they've got responsibility for something, is that really encourages that little bit of that continuous improvement, which of course then has a knock-on effect on your customer's experience. Think about upskilling them. So again, coming back to this building on strengths, and if you think about a football team, you don't train everybody to be in goal. You don't train everybody to, I'm not a football fan, so excuse me if I get the sort of terminology here wrong, but you don't train everybody to be the person that's going to take the penalty kicks. What you do is you build on people's strengths. And the goalkeeper, practices goalkeeping. The person that's going to take the penalty kicks practices that particular skill, so that you're really developing and picking up on people's strengths, but when you come to develop them and upskill them, you upskill them in the areas that they're actually strongest in so that they can then excel in those things. But make sure that you get a balance so that when you're not there, you have got somebody that can fill the gap in that particular area. Next one, absolutely critical, give your team the authority. Give your team the authority to do things when you're not there, or even when you're there, to deal with particular situations, and communicate that to everybody. So if you've got, let's say you've got 4 people in your team and you've got somebody that deals with that has a particular problem from a customer, and they think, okay, I don't have the authority to do that, but I don't have to go to the manager, I can go to this person because they're able to sign that off. Or better still, yes, I know if we've got this particular problem, I know that I can spend up to X amount to resolve that particular issue, or I know that I have got the authority to give the customer X in order to resolve it. That's better for the team member because they have got that element of responsibility. It makes them feel better because there's nothing worse from a team member saying, oh, I don't have the authority to do that, I'll have to go and ask my manager. As a customer, it really frustrates you, doesn't it, when that happens? So having somebody that's got the authority, it's better for the customer because you get some things resolved there and then, and it's definitely better for you as the manager or the owner because you haven't got to be interrupted every 5 minutes when there's a problem, so people can actually take decisions for themselves. So think through all of the things that are the most common issues, questions, complaints that you get in your business, and then give people parameters in terms of the levels of authority that they have around that. Think about developing a culture of continuous improvement. We talked about that in terms of champions, but if your team know that it's anything that can improve the system, you want to hear about, and give them some incentive to do that. Award prizes, stars, whatever you want to do, but give them something that recognises when they've added to that continuous improvement. And then finally, empower people to make their own sort of personal recommendations and suggestions, not to go and use your competitors, obviously, but, well, I say that's not obviously to do that, but, sometimes what you offer isn't right for that particular client, that's not right for that particular customer. So if somebody is looking for a particular spec that you don't do, give them, what you don't want to do is for a customer then not to trust you because you've talked them into buying something from you that's not a good fit for them. And equally for your team is to be able to spot that. And so if, let's say, oh, well, what would you, what would you recommend? Because we love it as a customer when you get, do you know what I'd recommend for you is X. When you fit, and it's said in that way that you feel it's a really personal suggestion. So again, allow your team license to give their own personal recommendations. Now you can only do that if we've done other things before in terms of having that product knowledge and all the things that have gone before. But allowing them to do that just adds that extra personal touch for your customers and allows your team some initiative. And some of the businesses that I've worked with, we've ended up with what which covers all of this, is that we've given them, we talk about wow budgets, so that team members know exactly what their parameters are, and then they can work within that. All right, just go ahead, somebody. A couple of questions in here which I'm not ignoring. I'm just going to come back to in just a moment, if that's okay, those of you who've asked some questions. Okay. So sorry, yes, as I was saying, license to do what's best in that particular situation. Just struggling actually to get my questions box to open up, so I'm just going to have a little scroll down on this. I just wanted to agree very strongly about the importance of making people feel okay about making suggestions. It can sometimes feel like an attack on the current way things are done, and the knee-jerk reaction may be to get defensive about the status quo, but this is a really bad idea. It kills initiative. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Mara. It does kill initiative, and the whole topic for today is about encouraging that initiative. And so, absolutely, we must, when people use their initiative, the last thing that we want to be doing is knocking them down, because that's going to have the complete opposite effect. Okay, so finally let's move on to 5 easy ways to reward your team. And I've put a little sort of caveat there. Bring a smile to their face, but won't cost you a fortune in bonuses and incentives. So these are not rocket science, I have to say, these 5 easy ways. So bear with me on this. Okay, so first one was a bit of a clue there with the image there. Is, well, first of all, if we do anything, find out what's important to them. So we talked earlier about this know, like, and trust. Get to know your team and get to know what's important to them. Because which of these 5 things you decide to do might very much depend on the individual and what's important to them. And the reason that I say that is that I was working with a client, this is a couple of years ago now, but it's just stuck with me. It was a big organisation, and they had an Employee of the Month scheme. And we were actually doing some. It was a coaching skills course actually, so nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But this has stuck with me. We were talking about recognising people's strengths and he said that he'd got this team member who had really sort of gone the extra mile, and he wanted to reward him, so he made him Employee of the Month. And this team member then he took out a grievance against his manager, because the culture of the organisation was that if you got Employee of the Month, you would look like you were teacher's pet, and he just felt really embarrassed about the whole thing. So he kind of took out a grievance, and I just couldn't believe it when he told me. But it just goes to show we can't assume that what we do is going to make that particular employee or that team member feel good. So always just check that out. Okay, so 5 things that we could do. Well, the first is blatantly obvious: say thank you. And of course, thank yous can take all sorts of shape, shapes and forms. But when we see good performance and we see a job well done, and in this instance we're talking about giving people bringing great customer service and giving an outstanding customer experience. When we see a team member doing that, let them know that you've recognised it and what a good job they've done. But just as importantly, what they did well, and thinking about the point about the being set on a pedestal in teacher's pet, you need to distribute your favours and your thanks amongst your team, that you don't start having favourites, but do use that as an illustration, because you say, well, let's come and have a look at what Nancy's done, what can we learn from this, so you do learn from it and you build on it. So saying a thank you, and this has to be your genuine appreciation. It's not just a sort of throwaway line that you're just going through the motions of saying thank you. Show that it's genuine, give some feedback, what it is that you liked about what they've done, how it's helped the business, and celebrate share successes. So if it's been something that's a big ask that somebody's done, is to make sure that they get that really sort of beefed up about it. Create that bit of buzz amongst the team so that they can then see what is good performance. And just saying something along the lines, I really appreciate what you've done, and I've got you this little token of my appreciation. It might just be a greetings card, and I think that everybody that's on the call today gets my newsletter. And I talked about the value. I was reminded of the value of the humble greetings card the other day, because I had two, one from a client and one actually from someone for whom I'm a customer, and it really does. It makes you feel good, and it's the thought that counts. Or it might be just a little sort of token gift when you're in the high street that you see something, and a box of chocolates or a little bottle of something, or a little toy, or if they're into sort of key rings, or something that they will appreciate. A couple of quid spent on that is very often far more valued than a voucher that's got like a monetary value that's very, very clear, or putting something in their pay packet. Doesn't it's gone, it has no significance, whereas something that sits on their desk for a couple of weeks actually will have far more weight. So that then leads you into some sort of treat. So what I mean by treat is that something that is, it's an occasional thing. It might be a team thing, doing something a little bit different with the team, going out doing something, or it could be for an individual member of the team. So again, thinking what's important to them. But that treat, let's say, for example, that somebody's worked excessively late into the evening or unsociable hours, that might have had an impact on their family. So maybe your treat is that they take their family out, thinking about school holidays at the moment, that they take their family out to a local attraction, and you pay for that. So it's like a payback for the family as well. If you've taken them away from their family for that evening or for a few evenings. So that you actually, they don't feel quite so bad from a home perspective outside of work for giving their all for you. So make that treat relevant. Sometimes I think it's useful to have something that's a win-win. So maybe they go and look at, if they're that way inclined, if they're very ambitious, they go and look at another company, another organisation, see how things are done, or you pay for them to do a workshop, something of that nature. That for some people that is a treat. For others, that will be complete turn-off. So horses for courses. For some people, particularly this time of year, a little bit of time off might be the most valuable gift that you can give somebody. So if they've got, thinking now they've got school children, that might be the most valuable gift. If they're a carer, giving them a little bit of time with their loved one, Christmas for Christmas shopping, all of those things. So that flexibility to go home early, come in late one day, take a bit of time off for something, that for a lot of people can be worth so much as a thank you. Making some kind of competition, I say here, healthy competition amongst your team. So having little league tables, little award ceremonies. Just as an aside, I go to a networking thing on a Thursday morning, and we have a little Oscar for whoever does the best elevator pitch, and it's a bit of fun, but it just forces you to sort of think about, okay, what other component have I got everything in here, and you can do the same with your team. even a league table. But what I would say is that make sure that you sort of spread it around a bit. So maybe you change the criteria every so often so that everybody's in with a chance of winning it at some point. And then keep your eye out also for awards that are relevant to your business. So something that's very pertinent for your industry and entering people for awards. I remember when I worked in the corporate world, and our sales director put me forward for Sales Trainer of the Year, and it was something that was done through the Institute of Marketing. So I actually got shortlisted for Sales Trainer of the Year, and that was such a boost to me, even to be put forward and then to get to the final four, which meant that I got invited to the dinner and the award ceremony and everything, and I was able to, invited my colleagues along and invited some of the sales team along who I trained, and it was great kudos for me and great for my reputation as well as being, it made me feel really good. So that was a great way for somebody to say thank you. And then last but not least on here is thinking about opportunities, and I should really say development opportunities. And again, you have some people who are ambitious, some people who aren't, but it's not necessarily just about opportunities for development as in promotion, but this could be an opportunity to do something a little bit differently, to do a different role, being the best that they can be in the job that they're doing. And remember earlier we talked about building on people's strengths. It could be about giving them, delegating some control to them, giving ownership of a particular project, allowing them to be champion for a specific area. Any of those things is a way of saying thank you for them putting in that little bit of effort. It might be something that is like one of my clients. He's just organised. He's got a lot of migrant workers working for him, and what he has done as a thank you is he has organised and releasing people for learning English as a second language. And that is a big thing for them. So, it could be something that's completely, it is work related because obviously that has a spin-off for him and for his customers. So it's thinking about the opportunities that are going to be relevant for your particular team. All I would say, just a word of warning on the development opportunities, is that you won't be able to accommodate everyone's aspirations, particularly if you're a small business. So just be mindful of that. But having said that, having some kind of sort of succession plan in place and something for people to work towards that's a great incentive. Okay, so in summary, I'm very conscious of time. Let people know what you want. Give them the knowledge, skills, resources and confidence to do that, communicating what you want, involving them, empowering them, and last but not least, those 5 ways of giving recognition. Now you might have heard me, like at one point I was thrown because of the slide that wasn't coming up, so I'm just going to whiz forward because I did have something that should have been in the middle of this and it's at the end. But just to let you know, I talked earlier about the customer journey involving your team in that. This is hot off the press. It's so hot off the press that I haven't actually finished writing it yet. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a sneak preview because in my hospitality background, mystery shoppers, guest shoppers are a very common thing, and I have a number of customer journey audit checklists which cover accommodation operations, events, and for tourism attractions. And one of my clients recently said, "Do you have one of these for our type of business?" And I said, "Oh, no, I don't." So this has been born out of doing it for the small entrepreneurial businesses and more of the businesses that are represented mainly on the call today, although we do have some hoteliers as well. So what I am just finalising is a customer journey audit, which gives you, in essence, what it does is it gives you an opportunity to flag up any shortfalls and work through with your team. If you're implementing anything, it's a great way to just check that everything's working as it should be. It's something that can be used as a routine periodic check. So, once every 3 months or whatever, or even monthly, you take a different element of it, but involving your team in the whole process. Great for induction if you're growing your team and you have new starters. It's great as a customer service training exercise, and in fact, a lot of the training I do, I will actually do a customer journey audit as part of the training. It's great to see things from a customer's perspective, getting into the customer's shoes, looking at things objectively, and it just helps to take the blinkers off a little bit. And also is that it helps to define priorities, because what you do is on the checklist, sometimes people find loads of stuff that needs to be looked at. You can't do it all at once. Some of it might be maintenance, some of it could be system stuff, some of it might be training. So it just helps to categorize what needs to happen. So normally this is going to be available from Monday, and it's going to be available for £247 plus VAT, that should say on there. But for people on the call today, until Monday, there's going to be an opportunity to pre-order that for just £97 with a bonus for the first 5 people who pre-order. So if you think that you could do with looking at your business with a fresh pair of eyes, taking a step back, with your team and working with that on your team, then this might be something that would be very valuable to you. Plus, for the first 5 people, there's a bonus, and that bonus is an extra 30-minute one-to-one mentoring session with me, so that I can personally take you through the whole process and to help you tailor the audit for your own business so that you can get the best from it. So if that sounds something that you think, yes, take that step back, look at all of this stuff objectively, then this is your chance to get it. So investment will be £97 plus VAT. I do include on all of my products no risk, 100% guarantee. But this is only going to be available until midnight on Sunday, and only the first 5 people who order it will qualify for the one-to-one bonus. So if that's of interest to you, you can reserve your copy and register for your bonus on www.naturallyloyal.com. Or if you think, not quite sure if this is for me or not, then just email me, give me a phone number, and I can call you back. So I'm just going to go back again because I realised that my summary is before this. I would like to ask you just to jot down in here what's been the most useful thing for you from today's webinar, because I'd like to hear what you've got out of here. And if you would like to share what you need to start, stop, or do more of, then that would be nice to hear as well. So while you're doing that, I'm just going to move forward again. So if anybody's interested with the customer journey, I'm going to move down to a summary of what it is. So if that's something for you, if you go to www.naturallyloyal.com/customerjourney.com, or just send me an email if that's easier. Just reply to your confirmation of the webinar, or that will get to me. So I'm sorry that we overran a little bit, partly due to the technical hitches early on, but having said that, I've overrun anyway, so apologies everybody for that. I hope that you have found the session useful, and do send me through your questions, any feedback that you've got, and the customer journey audit. That's Caroline Cooper saying bye for now. Speak to you next month.